In these tutorials, we are going to see how we can handle error. Let's say if there is a network request and we can't get our data here, how do we catch or handle that kind of error? So the way we do that is let me see this here. This is it ends here. Okay, now we are going to have our .catch, a catch block here, which is going to catch us an error. So if there is an error, this block of code is going to fire and we want to do a console log. And what do we want to see in our console log? Error.message. Still in this is an error is an object that has property of message. So we are going to see that. But now if we refresh this, we can't get any error. So what we can do is we can stop our server so that there will be no requests made. The way we stop our server is Control C. Control C will stop the server, and then let's try to refresh so that we'll make our request. We get an error. We say fail to fetch. Fail to fetch, it means there was a network failure. So when we try to fetch this, we realize that there was no data. There was no connection with the server. So it catches the error here and display the error. But what if we have a case where we connect to the database and then we are unable to get any response from the database? How do we know if the response was successful or not? But let's see what we are getting back from the database. Let's see the response object. So let's console log this and we will see the response object. Let's see how it looks like. So we'll connect our database, we'll connect back to our JSON server again. And we want to get this response to see what is on this response object. When we get the response object, we can know which property to target to check if there was a successful response from the database or the database returned and data not found or something. Let's check that out now. We refresh this. We have loading and we get everything. So this is our response object. Let's see, we have an OK value here is true status, which means the response was successful. So if we want to know if we actually got the right data from the database or not, we will check this OK property. If this OK property is true, that means we got something from the database and we are sending it back to the front end. But if this OK object is false, that means something happened and we're not able to get the data that we requested from the database. So we are going to check this property of OK. So I'm going to remove this. So we'll do something like this. If OK is true, if OK is true, what should we do if OK is true? No, if response.ok not OK, if res.ok, yeah, that's how we check it. If it is true, that means we got the data. But if there is nothing inside this, if OK is false, if this value is false, so if not response.ok is false, we want to fire maybe a console log here and to see what went wrong. Let's check now this, and we'll change this value, add maybe an extra S there, which we know may be wrong, because if we check our JSON, we'll see there is no S here. Now let's see that in our browser. So we'll run this. Oh, it throws an error, a fat error. But we are interested in this part. You see, OK is false. OK is false. So we get it now. OK is false because we have changed our endpoint. We are using a wrong endpoint. So we get this other wrong stuff here because OK is false. Now, the way we are going to do this, so we can, if truly there is an error there, or there is no OK is not true, we throw an error. We throw an error like this, and then we put our message here. You can put any message that you like. We can say could not fetch data from the back end. So we can display this message, could not fetch data from the back end. But now, if we are getting an error, we should have some kind of state to store our error value there. So let's create a state here. We'll call this state error, and this is set error. And initially, we are going to use state. We are going to have a value of null in our error. So there will be no error inside. We'll have a value of null. Now we can come and set, if there is an error, we want to set error here. We want to set that state to the error. Dot message. We want to set this error here with if there is an error, because if this thing throws this error, this catch block is going to catch the error here. We can take off this parenthesis here. It's not important. So this, if there is an error, it throws it. This error will catch the error. If there was a connection error, this still catch block will catch the error and set the error to that particular value. And then how do we see that on the screen? So we are still going to do our conditional ranging here. So if we have an error in our state, if there is an error in our state, what will happen? We should display this message. We should display this message error. So if there is an error, we should display this message error to the user. But if there is no error, if this value of error is still null, then this line of code will not run completely. Let's look at that in the front end. Refresh. So we see could not fetch data from the back end, which is okay. But now the problem is we are still having this data loading. So let's fix that. So when we set our error, message, we should be able to set our this data loading. We should set it to what was there initially. Loading is true, so we should set it to false, right? Yeah, we should set that to false. Okay, and then if, let's check that out. Let's just check it first, one after the other. So good. Since there is an error, could not fetch data from the back end, and that's exactly what has happened. We cannot fetch data from the back end, and that fetching has disappeared. But now let's fix our endpoint. Let's make it in such a way that we can actually get data from the back end. Let's check this out. We run this loading, and we get everything correctly. So we don't have any other display message, but it is really nice if where is, okay, if there is data and there was an error before that, if there is data and there was an error before that in our state, maybe something happened and the endpoint change, we should be able to set our error to null if there is a data. Yeah, it's just good practice to set it to null, because at times we can have in our state an error message and then we change our endpoint. We have data. When we have data, we should set this to null and check it out. So everything works out well. So guys, that is how we catch error in React when making an external API call.